Starting this week, South Korean government ministries are making their progress reports to President Yoon. The Trade Ministry, in its report, set the goal of achieving growth in exports next year, despite forecasts of a decline. This would be based on exports in defense and nuclear. For the Small Business Ministry, the plan is to help grow startups with the potential to become billion-dollar companies. Shin Ha-young reports.
South Korea's Trade and Business Ministries presented their plans for next year to President Yoon on Tuesday, plans aimed at achieving growth despite economic uncertainties. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said it aims to achieve growth in exports next year despite the government's outlook of a decline of 4.5%. To meet the goal, the ministry will seek to bolster exports in promising sectors like nuclear power plants and the defense industry. It's also aiming for the country's exports to reach $680 billion. To achieve this, it's going to come up with policies through the exports strategy meeting chaired by President Yoon. With the Ukraine war having exposed vulnerabilities in global supplies of energy, the ministry is also planning to accelerate the revitalization of South Korea's nuclear power ecosystem. The goal is to extend the lives of 7 nuclear plants by next year by providing the industry with support worth 3.5 trillion won, or around $2.7 billion, in the form of equipment and financial aid. And with the global trade environment changing rapidly, the ministry is planning to engage in dialogue with the United States about ways to mitigate the negative effects of the so-called Inflation Reduction Act so that South Korean makers of electric cars and batteries can take the lead in the American market. To create drivers of future economic growth, it will focus on nurturing the bio-industry and in its role as energy ministry, as well as 5 key industries in the energy sector, including hydrogen and offshore wind. Earlier this morning, President Yoon raised concern about the budget for next year that lawmakers passed last week. He said it lacks measures to support important growth industries like semiconductors. President Yoon also received a briefing on next year's plans from the Ministry of SMEs and Startups, which will be focusing on digitalization. It aims to nurture so-called global unicorn companies, meaning new firms worth more than $1 billion. As part of these efforts, it will select 1,000 digital startups over the next 5 years in the industry of chips, robots, and AI to support those sectors in terms of R&D and help them enter the global market. And with the pandemic having driven more business online, it's also planning to help Korea's traditional markets achieve their own digital transformation. It will also promote collaboration between these traditional marketplaces and large retailers in the interest of mutual growth in local communities. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.